Okay, good morning to you all. All are fine?
Yes, sir.
Good morning,
Very
sir.
good. Morning,
Good morning, sir.
morning. So, would you like to ask any questions on stress path or shear strength? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm extremely sorry. Since last week, the network was very bad within the campus. I do not know what is the reason, but it is pathetically very bad. So, I'm helpless. So, try to bear. Uh, it's always saying bad network, something. I don't know how other people are managing. So is it the same case with the remaining lectures or only with me?
Sir,
Sir,
it's
most
also happening in Shantanu sir also.
computational mechanics also it's going on.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Only for Shantanu and me, not other subjects.
Yes, sir. Pavement material is going well, sir. Means no connection breaking is there.
Acha. Okay. So I think Shantanu and me, what about Haldar sir?
So we don't have Haldar sir's class.
Oh. Actually, maybe second half. Okay. Okay. So let me explain you about the stress path a little bit more with small examples. So I have taken another case here to demonstrate what exactly happening. So when you are increasing or decreasing the stress variance, that is sigma 1 and sigma 3. So this is a stress path diagram which has been drawn between P versus Q. So I don't need to define again what is the meaning of P, what is the meaning of Q. P is sigma 1 plus sigma 2 and Q is sigma 1 minus sigma 3 by 2. So here in this diagram, so there are three stress paths have been shown, so which have been designated with this thick line. So starting from origin OA, AB and BC. Okay, so let us try to understand how and under what stress conditions this stress path is following or emerging. So let us try to understand the evolution of the stress path with varying the stress constants, say sigma 1 or sigma 3. So initially I am taking the first condition from O to A. O to A. So this represents the stress path for isotropic compression. So isotropic means equal stress in all the three directions. So here it has been shown the stress in the vertical direction delta sigma dash, stress in the radial direction, that is delta sigma r, or alternatively we can say delta sigma 1 and delta sigma 3 is equivalent. So this is called as a isotropic condition. So since it is starting from 0, which indicates that initially the delta sigma is 0 on the soil sample, which also indicates that so the sample is just has been retrieved from the field condition. So in those conditions only there is a possibility of sigma 1 and sigma 3 becomes 0. Okay, so try to understand carefully. When somebody says sigma 1 and sigma 3 is 0 on the sample means the sample is just retrieved from the field condition. Then you start applying the loading, which may be axial loading or the triaxial loading, whatever it is. Okay, now another important thing that we need to understand is when the stress path is following only horizontally, only horizontally. So it is possible only when there is no shear stresses act on this element. When there are no shear stresses act on this element, maybe in the horizontal direction or maybe in the vertical direction or otherwise. So on the plane of the maximum principal plane or on the plane of minor principal, whatever it is. So as long as there are no shear stresses acting in the soil sample, the stress path either follows the horizontal path or follows the vertical path, depending upon the stress variance. Okay, but the possibility of the vertical is in a different scenario. So for our general circumstance, so it always follows the horizontal, that is on the p-axis. So this is isotropic condition. So these are some understanding how to calculate the PA and Q. So delta P1, so this is sigma 1 plus sigma 3 by 2. Since this is isotropic condition, so all the three have been taken. So all the three, that means sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3. So since sigma 2 is equivalent to sigma 3 or which is again equivalent to sigma 1, so we can say so here we can say, so all the summation sigma 1 plus sigma 2, that is 3 delta nothing but sigma 1 minus sigma 3 by 2, but so these are equal, so it will get nullified, so this becomes 0. So in one way, if you look at if you take the ratio of delta P1 by delta Q1, which is nothing but the slope of this line, so since this denominator component is 0, the slope of this line is 0. So now let us try to increase one of the component of stress variant, maybe in the vertical direction or maybe in the horizontal direction on the same element already which was undergone some amount of the stress condition. So this is the position 1. Now let us go to the position 2. Initially this sample was subjected to the isotropic condition. Now the keep sigma 3 constant, that is delta sigma 3 is 0, and increase only delta sigma 1, that is increase only the axial loading condition. Then this follows some kind of an inclination, or this follows, you can say, the total stress path. So since we are not talking about the measurement of the core water pressure, so we should designate this as a stress following the total stress path. So here delta sigma 3 is 0, so therefore only remaining is delta sigma 1. So delta sigma 1 by 3, and delta Q2 is nothing but sigma 1 minus sigma 3. So again sigma 3 is 0. So your delta P2 is nothing but delta sigma 1 by 3, and delta Q2 is nothing but only delta sigma 1. And again if you take the slope of this inclined line, the slope of that, which is nothing but delta P1 by x, del x by del y. So del y by del x. So the slope, so then delta Q2 by delta P2. So this is delta sigma 1 by delta sigma 1 by 3. So this is 3 or 1 upon 3, whatever you take it. Okay. So the slope of this line is 1 horizontal to 3 vertical. So this is what exactly happens. So when you keep radial stress 0 and increase only the deviative stress, and you try to reverse the condition now. Keep sigma 1 constant and try to increase only the radius. So we arrived from A to B. Now at the condition of B, what we are doing is we are increasing the delta sigma 3 by keeping the delta sigma 1 0 or constant. So again, if we substitute of the equations delta P3 and delta Q3, so delta P3 is nothing but delta sigma 1 plus delta sigma 2 plus delta sigma 3 by 2. Sigma 2 and sigma 3 are equivalent, so therefore sigma 1 plus 2 sigma 3 by 3, it can be written. So delta sigma 3 is 0 and delta sigma 1 is 0 and minus sigma 3. So this is delta Q3 is nothing but minus delta sigma 3. So again if you take the slope of this line, So the slope of this line, so that is nothing but delta q3 by delta p3. So what you will get is minus 3 by 2. So minus indicates the reverse direction, negative slope. So negative slope. Okay. So when you look at carefully this entire stress path diagram, so one thing is clear. The stress path, when you solely increase the sigma 1, it is a different. When you increase only sigma 3, then it is a different. It is a different. So this covers the axial compression, while this covers the unloading condition, some kind of an excavation, or you can say earth pressure, basically earth pressure. So if you look at active or passive condition, we keep sigma 1 as a constant and increase or decrease the sigma 3 such that so active or passive earth pressure condition arises. While in this case, this is prevalent in case of the triaxial testing, where we keep sigma 3 as a constant value and increase the sigma 1, that is axial load. Okay, so in this single graph, so we are covering almost 3 conditions. When the sample is subjected to isotrophic condition, how the stress follows. Okay, and what happens if you increase only sigma 1 by keeping the sigma 3, and if you increase only sigma 3 by keeping the sigma 1. So I have a small question here. If you look at carefully isotropic compression, so for any amount of the load of sigma 3 and sigma 1, if they are equally, so will the sample fails at some point, or will it keep on base the load infinitely? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is, if you look at the isotropic compression, so as long as you are increasing delta sigma in both the directions, so the sample could able to take infinite amount of load. Is it possible?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So then where it fails? So does it mean that the sample will not fail at all under isotropic condition? Okay, so just think it over, because this is a small point you need to understand. Maybe you can take it this as a small assignment. So take it this question as a small assignment and submit it. Okay, so
Sir,
for, yeah,
sir, this we have to consider for both the kinds of soil, like fine grain and coarse grain, both.
yeah, you can take it, but the material doesn't matter. Otherwise, just try it. So when you
Okay.
are exploring,
Yes,
then you
sir.
will get an idea. Will it be different for fine grain, coarse grain, or will it be same for fine and coarse
Okay, sir.
grain? Okay, so the previous our discussion was only on the total stress part. Now, if you start measuring the pore water pressure, at any given condition, at any given condition, so this is how it looks like. So this is pore water pressure. Then this is the effective stress path in case of the triaxial loading, and this is the effective stress path in case of earth pressure loading. Okay, so here effective stress path is shown as a the straight linear line, but which may not be the reality. Which may not be the reality. So it has shown just for understanding. So this is a small example on the stress path. So if you want to note it down, you can note it down. So two cylindrical specimens A and B of a soil were loaded as follows. Both specimens were isotrophically loaded by a stress of 200 kilopascals under drained condition. Subsequently, the radial stress applied on specimen A was held constant and the axial stress was incrementally increased to 440 kilopascals under undrained conditions. So the axial stress on specimen B was held constant and the radial stress incrementally reduced to 50 kilopascals under drained conditions. So plot the total and effective stress paths for each specimen, assuming the soil is a linear isotrophic elastic material. Calculate the maximum excess pore water pressure in specimen A. So better note down. So this is stress path due to axial pressure. So two cylindrical specimens A and B of a soil were loaded as follows. Both specimens were isotrophically loaded by a stress of 200 kilopascals under drained conditions. So initially both the specimens were isotrophically loaded and the drainage valve is opened. Okay, so the triaxial load applied was 200 kilopascals. Subsequently, the radial stress applied on specimen A was held constant. So subsequently, then what you have done is on sample A, so delta sigma 1 was increased by keeping delta sigma 3 constant, but undrained condition. So that means during the isotropic loading, the sample was consolidated, but during shearing, no consolidation was taking place. So the axial stress on specimen B was held constant and the radial stress incrementally reduced to 50 kilopascals. While the reverse thing has been done on specimen B, so pascals to 50 kilopascals. So but under drained condition. So where pore water pressure was not allowed to develop. Okay, so it's understood that pore water pressure was developing only during the triaxial testing because it is undrained condition. So plot the total and the effective stress paths for each specimen, assuming the soil is linear. Blah blah blah. Okay, I think from the statement of the problem, so it is clear what exactly has been done in triaxial testing. There are two specimens, specimen A and specimen B. Both were initially consolidated by applying an isotropic loading of 200 kilopascals. Since it is a drained condition, so there is no possibility of development of any pore water pressure. Okay, so therefore total stress is equivalent to the effective stress. Now subsequently on sample A, sigma 3 of 200 kilopascals was kept constant, but sigma 1 was increased from 200 kilopascals to 440 kilopascals. So, but when the load is increased in axial direction from 200 to 440 kilopascals, the drainage valve was closed. So meaning thereby, now from 200 kilopascals onward, the pore water pressure started developing. Okay, on the sample A. On the other hand, on sample B, so sigma 1 was kept constant as 200 kilopascals. So until then, there was no pore water pressure developed. But from there onward, from there onward. So the 200 kilopascals was kept constant in axial direction, but in the radial direction it was reduced. But at the same time, drainage was allowed. That means no pore water pressure develops. So first, this is solution. I explain about the solution and discuss in detail to make you understand to the maximum extent possible. So this is, let us go in. First, determine the loading conditions. So loading is axisymmetric and both drained and undrained conditions are specified. Okay. Isotropic loading. So for axisymmetric, isotropic loading under drained condition. So delta U is 0. This is drained condition. Okay. So whenever you see drained condition, so immediately a point should pop up in your mind. The pore water pressure is 0. As long as drainage is opened, the pore water pressure is 0. So when you say the pore water pressure is 0, it is obvious that your total stress and effective stress both are equal. So this is the fundamental understanding to anyone. So consequently, so if you try to draw the stress path for the initial isotropic loading condition, so initial isotropic loading condition, so you need to calculate delta P dash and delta Q dash. So delta P dash is nothing but delta sigma dash axial loading plus the 2 times of delta sigma r radial divided by average. So that is three loading conditions. Okay. So this is delta sigma 1 dash. So this can be rewritten as, so delta sigma 1 dash plus 2 delta sigma 1 dash by 3. So this is delta sigma 1 dash. So delta P dash is nothing but 200 kilopascals. While since this is a negative, the delta Q dash, this is sigma 1 dash minus, so sigma 3 dash, so this becomes 0. The Q dash becomes 0. So delta P dash is this one. So P naught or P dash is 200 kilopascal, and similarly Q naught or Q dash become 0. So this is the values of P naught, P dash or Q naught, Q dash at the initial state. Then step 3. So try to plot the stress path. So based on the points which have been calculated in the previous step. So based on the points which have been calculated in the previous step. So create a graph with axis P dash and P as the abscissa and Q as the ordinate, and plot the isotropic stress path with coordinates initial conditions 0, 0 because it has to start from the origin, then 200, 0, 100, 0. So if you look at carefully, so this is the plot. Until it is reaching the 200 kilopascals. So consequently, the Q dash is 0, which we have calculated from the previous step, and P dash is attained a value of 200 kilopascals. So it moves horizontally on the P dash or P axis. So P dash or P axis. So the next step, so determine the increase in stresses. Now see, after the isotropic loading condition, there was a change in the loading condition. On specimen A, triaxial compression was conducted. On specimen B, triaxial extension was conducted. Okay, so on specimen A, when we have an undrained condition, so delta U is not 0. So just recall, on the specimen after isotropic loading, after reaching the point A, the stress was increased from 200 kilopascals to 400 kilopascals. So 200 kilopascals to 400 kilopascals. So consequently, so delta U is not 0 and no change in the radial stress, but the axial stress is increased to 440 kilopascals. So consequently, if you try to determine, there was no change in the radial stress, but the sigma 1 was increased from 200 kilopascals to 440 kilopascals. So the total increment was 240. So the total increment was 240. So then for specimen B, so this is a drain loading for specimen B, drain loading. So that is delta U is 0. So therefore total stress path is nothing but effective stress path. Whenever delta U is 0, you should understand that there was no difference between total stress path and effective stress path. Total will become effective. So axial stress held constant, that is delta sigma 1 is 0, there was no increment, and radial stress decreased from 200 kilopascals to 50 kilopascals. 200 kilopascals to 50 kilopascals. Therefore, your delta sigma 3 is nothing but 50 minus 200. So minus 150 kilopascals. So minus 150 kilopascals. So next, calculate the increase in stress variance. So these are the conditions. So earlier we have calculated the stresses. A and on specimen B. Now in this step, calculate the stress variance for stress path. That is delta P and delta Q. Delta P and delta Q. So delta P is nothing but delta sigma 1 plus delta sigma 2 plus delta sigma 3 by 3. So therefore delta sigma 1. So in case of the previous one, so delta sigma 1 is 240 and delta sigma 3 is 0. So delta sigma 1 is 240 and delta sigma 3 is 0. So 240 by 3, that is 80 kilopascals. So 80 kilopascals. Similarly, delta Q is delta sigma 1 minus delta sigma 3. So delta sigma 3 is 0. So 240 minus 0, that is 240 kilopascals. 240 kilopascals. So if you take the slope of this one, delta Q by delta P, so 240 by 8, that is 3. That is 3. So now we have another point for specimen A, that is delta P is 80 kilopascal and delta Q is 240 kilopascal. So delta P is 80 and delta, so correspondingly identify this point and indicate on the stress path diagram. Indicate on stress path diagram. So where is this point now? So 240 and 80. So 240 plus, sorry, total 240. So 240, this is a total stress path. This is how it looks like, 1:3. The slope of this line is. But this is 240, another increment is 80. So initially you are at the 200 kilopascals condition. So already you applied 200. So the additional is 80. So 240 plus 80. 240 plus, sorry, yeah, 200 plus 80, 280, sorry. So 200 plus 80. So 280, that is delta P, net delta P. And delta Q is 240. So delta P is 240. So this is the point. This is the point. So now on specimen B, so on the specimen, the delta, so what you will get is minus 100 kilopascals, minus 100 kilopascals. And delta Q is nothing but, so delta sigma 1 minus delta sigma 3. So delta sigma 1 is 0 and minus of minus, so plus 150 kilopascals. So slope of the effective stress path or total stress path is delta Q by delta P dash, that is minus 1.5. So now try to identify the another point. So initially the sample is at 200 kilopascal, but now the delta P, that is one stress variant, is reduced from 200 to minus 100. So 200 minus 100, the net will become the 100. So the net will become the 100 delta P, and delta Q is 150. So this is 100 comma 150. So this is the total or effective stress path for the specimen B, and this is the total stress path for specimen A, not for B, should be for A. Yeah, sorry, this is a point. I'm sorry. So this is for specimen A, and this is for specimen B. Now calculate the current stress. So this is already I explained it, how to calculate. So P is equal to P naught plus delta P, 200 plus 80, 280 kilopascals. Then P dash is equal to delta P, so 200 plus 0, 200 kilopascals, initial condition. Q is equal to Q dash is equal to Q naught plus delta Q, so 0 plus 240, so 240 kilopascals. So try to try to plot the total stress path or effective stress path. So in this case, the specimen A, plot point P as 280 comma 240, so that we have calculated 280 comma 240, 280 comma 240. So then point B, 200 comma 240, so 200 comma 240. So point specimen A and specimen B and B naught. So B and B naught. Okay. So then specimen B, 100 comma 150. So then connect all the stress path. So in the specimen A, we could able to draw only the total stress path, and if you deduct the increase in pore water pressure, or if you draw a straight line from point A, so that becomes the effective stress path. So here in the statement of the sum it has been said. So the soil follows the linear behavior. So now let us try to understand. So AB in the figure shows the total stress path, and AB naught shows the effective stress path. Here where is AB naught? And AC in the figure shows the effective stress path. So this is the effective stress path. So BB dash shows the maximum excess pore water pressure. The mean stress difference is 280 minus 200. So 280 minus 200, this is the development of the pore water pressure, that is 80 kilopascal. See, now you have to understand, maybe it is unclear to you how you arrived at 80 kilopascal. Let us try to understand. So initially when the soil is isotropically consolidated by increasing the confining pressure from 0 to 200 kilopascals, the drainage condition is drained. So drained means there is no development of any pore water pressure. That means up to 0 to 200 kilopascals, there is no pore water pressure development. Clear? So that means any point you take on left side of this 200 kilopascals, this vertical line. Now from 200 kilopascals onward, so you applied deviate fixed stress, that is increase the sigma 1 by keeping the valve closed, that is called as undrained condition. As you are increasing the stress, so as the increase in the pore water pressure. Okay, so this indicates that So under undrained condition, more and more amount of load is borne by the water particle. Okay. So at the final condition where the stress was increased to 440 kilopascals, 440 kilopascals. So until 200 kilopascals there is nothing. So until 200 kilopascals there was nothing. So but from 200 onward, so there was a development of the pore water pressure. So that can be determined by the maximum stress at this point minus the point until which there was no development of the pore water pressure. That should give you the net value of the pore water pressure. So here in this case, the maximum delta sigma increase was up to 280. So 280 minus 280. This is the small example. So,
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, in this case, it can be also understood as from 200 to increase was to 440.
Yeah.
So the total difference was 240.
But
yes, sir.
But you need to calculate the point, na.
No, so this 240 will be equally distributed in three directions. So 240 by 3, 80, 80 in each case.
No problem. Whatever the way you understood.
Okay, sir.
But that will not happen.
Okay,
it will not
sir.
be in that way.
Okay, sir.
Means how do you distribute it? I did not get it. Can you explain?
Sir, means 240 is a total increase. Initially, the stress, extra deviator stress which we are applying is equally converted to excess pore water pressure.
Yeah, means see, from up to 200 there was no pore water pressure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes,
from
sir.
200 to 440 there was a pore water pressure.
Yes, sir. And that will be equal to 240.
That will be equal to, no, not totally will be equal to pore water, na.
Okay.
So
Sir, when we talk about this spring analogy, sir,
that
initially
is
when we.
for consolidation.
Okay, sir.
That is for consolidation when the sample is fully saturated.
Okay, sir.
Okay, but here if you look at our case, from 0 to 200 kilopascals, we consolidated the soil sample.
Okay, sir.
That means it is not no more fully saturated.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
So suppose if you say, since it is starting from the origin, then your analogy is correct.
Okay, sir.
For example, suppose if I draw a line from origin to B, then whatever you said is correct. Up to 280, the entire thing is nothing but pore water.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So any other questions?
Sir, after consolidation, the sample will not remain saturated.
No. How can it be? The condition for any triaxial testing is it should be initially saturated. If throughout the triaxial, if the sample has to be saturated, then there is no meaning of pore water pressure parameters A and B. No need to develop any kind of a theory. But there is an interesting point that you need to understand. When we talk about drained and undrained condition, there are two other parameters like water content and degree of saturation. Okay, so you may reduce the water content, but you still maintain the degree of saturation as 100%. There is a possibility. So you try to develop a relationship between water content on the x-axis versus degree of saturation on the y-axis. Okay, so it doesn't mean that water content of 100% only equal to degree of saturation of 100%. No, even water content of 20% can signify the degree of saturation of 100%. Okay, so if you look at their fundamental meaning of what is the water contained, what is the degree of saturation, then you can understand the logic. Okay, and when you talk about the triaxial testing, we never talk about the water content. We always say whether degree of saturation is 100% or not. Okay, so no problem. This is another small demonstration. Slightly,
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you
Yes.
repeat step 7?
Step 7. Step 7 is nothing but whatever the points we have calculated on. See, here we have calculated. Na? Step 7 is summation of step 6. How to determine the points. See, for example, now arrived at point number A. Okay, so where delta P is delta P dash 200 kilopascals and delta Q is 0. Delta Q is 0. And then onward, we try to apply two different kinds of loading conditions on specimen A and specimen B. On specimen A, so this is how it looks like. But this is the increase was a delta sigma. Okay, not delta P. So you have to determine the delta P. That is sigma 1 plus sigma 3 plus sigma 2 by 3. Okay, so this 80 is average of 3. So 200 plus the delta P, the increase in delta P is 80. So 280. So this is total stress and effective stress. So P dash plus delta P dash is equal, that is 200 kilopascals. Total and effective. While in case of Q dash, here it is a positive. So the total and effective are different. While in case of the Q, since it is sigma 1 minus sigma 3 by 2, sigma 1 minus sigma 3 by 2, so the total will be equivalent to the effective. So therefore Q is equal to Q dash. So in this case, so what we initially get is total stress part. So this is for specimen B, initial condition P and P dash. Here there is drainage condition, no pore water pressure develops. So total become effective. Total or effective doesn't matter, both are same. So P and P dash is equal to P naught plus delta P. So 200 minus 100, 100 kilopascals. P is equal to initial plus incremental. So this is 0 plus 150, that is 150 kilopascals. So the summation of these two is nothing but your step 7. So if you are a little confusion about the stress step number 7, you try to confine it only step number 6. So based on this, you can able to develop this diagram.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a simple another demonstration on an earth dam. So what the fundamental meaning of this series. There is a constant sea phase through this earth dam, so there is a possibility of the development of the exit gradient at the end of the earthen dam. So therefore, the toe portion of the earthen dam becomes the critical. So in all earthen embankments, which is meant for the reservoir. Okay, so to understand how the stresses are increasing or decreasing, so when there is no seepage or when there is a seepage, so try to consider a small element A. So initially, so during the construction of an earth dam, during the construction of earth dam. So this diagram valid for during the construction, and the diagram B is valid during the seepage condition. During the seepage condition. So during the construction, so initially there was no stress on the element A, that is on the ground surface. No stress on the element A, that is sigma 1 and sigma 3 both are 0. So it starts from the horizon. Now you start building over the earthen dam on top of the element A. So we are increasing the delta sigma 3. You are increasing the delta sigma 3. Sorry, delta sigma 1. And so correspondingly, so there is an increase in the total stress path. So therefore AB is nothing but total stress path during the construction. AB is total stress path during the construction. During the construction. And BC is steady seepage forward pressure. That comes later. Okay, then A bar, B bar, A bar, B bar. So this is effective stress path during the construction. Suppose if you want to measure the pore water pressure during the construction, this is how it looks like. And B bar, BF, effective stress path during the pore pressure. During the pore pressure. So instead of this one, let us try to understand in a very simplistic way. First, during the construction of an earth dam, what is the kind of the stresses and what is the kind of drained condition or undrained condition on the element A? First, during the construction, so we only add small amount of water to the soil sample only for the purpose of compaction. Okay, there was no transient seepage or there was no steady seepage. As a result, because of the water which is used during the construction, the water pressure develops within the soil element A is the negative pore water pressure. Because the sample is not fully saturated. The sample is water was started ponding in the reservoir. So we started filling the water in the reservoir. Now over a period of time, there is a constant seepage through the earthen dam, and it passes through the exit point where the element E is also part of this exit point. Okay. Now what happens with negative pressure? Will it be still negative only or will it be positive?
Sir, it will be equalized.
It will be equalized.
Means first it will become 0 and then start increasing like that.
Correct. So initially it was in negative. Then as the seepage is happening, so initially it may be transient condition, transient seepage. So during the transient seepage, the pore pressure on the element A turns from negative towards the 0. When there was a steady state seepage, then from the 0, then it goes to the positive. So it goes to the positive. Okay, so this is what exactly happens on any element during the transient seepage and during the steady state seepage.
Sir,
So yeah.
Sir, this seepage is also due to the negative pore water pressure that is developed.
Not due to negative pore water pressure, it is due to suction or the capillary action.
To equalize the negative pore water pressure.
Correct.
Okay, sir.
Okay, negative pore pressure is a condition. Okay, so but
Yes,
there should be some kind of an affinity within the soil particle by which it should attract the water. That is called as a suction.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so initially it is negative, then it becomes the positive during the steady state seepage. Now, when there is a steady state seepage, what happens to the total stress condition and what happens to the effective stress condition? So that's what is the meaning of these two graphs. So when you take only during the construction, so these are the stresses on the element A, and during the steady state seepage, so when you consider the total stresses and effective stresses, so this is how they look like. So they look like. same thing. When the pore pressure becomes 0, effective stress reaches to point B. To C. So this is because the nullification of negative pore water pressure. So then consequently the magnitude from B to C will become the steady state sequence or the pore water pressure on the element B. So the effective stress goes horizontally from B to C unless the failure occurs before the effective stress reaches to 0. So as you can see here, the point reaching to the failure plane, that is KF line. So then, so suppose if you consider the effective stress principle, then effective starts somewhere at the large point. So here you need to calculate how much is the total load coming. So initially there is some load, and during the seepage, the effective stress changes. So initially when there was a total stress, but when there was an effective stress, the stress increases on the element A. Okay. So you can make an analogy between this problem and the previous problem, which I explained exactly. Why this is moving only in the horizontal direction on p-axis. So I think, so this is another sum on direct shear test. So just imagine you have conducted a direct shear test corresponding to 3 confining pressures, and this is the deformation diagram, and this is the normal stress versus shear stress diagram. So this can be developed corresponding to 3 normal stresses, as you can see here, point number 7, 11 and 14, 7, 11 and 14. Since you have conducted the direct shear test, so predominantly it passes through the horizon. The slope of this line is nothing but pi. And these are the stress condition. So normal stress sigma n and horizontal stress sigma h, which is nothing but k naught into sigma 1. So you can convert this into the Mohr circle, that is sigma and tau. So here there is you are applying only horizontal line. So on the plane of vertical, draw an vertical line and horizontal line. So to identify the pole point. So this is how the Mohr circle looks like. Sigma 1 0 and sigma 3. And so this is how one can able to determine from the Mohr circle the direct angle made by the failure planes of major principal axis and the minor principal axis. I think we don't have a time, so maybe, so I will stop it here only. So there is another sum also. Okay, let me explain a small point about. But you have class at 11 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then leave it. So I will stop it here only. Maybe I can discuss about these two sums in the next class.